You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper than again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 7th part of What If Naruto Enters K-Pop Demon Hunters. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Slygold on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. She brushed her fingertips against the screen, tracing the outline of his sleeping face. "You idiot," she whispered, voice trembling. "Trying to hold the whole world on your shoulders, and still worried about me." Her chest squeezed. The memory of his words, her screams, her pleas, echoing in his trial made her want to break all over again. That he had to endure that alone, that he had chosen to keep walking even when it ripped him apart, it was cruel. Too cruel. Her violet patterns shimmered faintly, curling like threads of light across her arms. They pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, a silent promise carried across the Han moon to him. "You're not alone, Naruto," she murmured, leaning her forehead against the cool glass. "Not now. Not ever." The door cracked open a sliver. Zoey peeked in, her eyes soft with worry. Mira stood behind her, arms crossed but her expression gentler than usual. "He asleep?" Zoey whispered. Rumi nodded, not moving her gaze from the screen. Mira exhaled sharply, but her voice was quiet. "Good. He needs it." The door clicked shut again, leaving Rumi alone with him. She sat back slowly, tucking her knees to her chest. The couch creaked under her weight, exhaustion finally seeping into her bones. But she didn't hang up. Couldn't. As long as his face lingered on the screen, she felt tethered, like the miles between them weren't so vast. Her thumb hovered over the glass, brushing the faint image of his hand from earlier, pressed there as if to reach her. Her smile wavered, her throat tight, but her eyes held steady. "You said if you fall apart, it's with me," she whispered. "Then I'll be strong enough for both of us. I'll carry you, Naruto. I'll carry us." By the time the concert ended, her body was running on autopilot. The cheers still echoed in her bones, the light still burned in her eyes, but her mind was far away back in that dim room in Takayama, where Naruto had fallen asleep to her voice. She clutched her phone like it was glass, careful not to press the end call button even as the screen dimmed. Just hearing the faint buzz of connection steadied her. "Come on," Zoey said softly, looping an arm through Rumi's. Her usual energy was muted, like she understood better than anyone how fragile the moment was. "You're staying with us tonight." Mira was already waiting by the exit, arms crossed but her eyes gentler than her tone. "No arguments. You don't need to be alone right now." Rumi hesitated, glancing toward her apartment 1 floor below. It felt wrong to go there, wrong to climb into a bed that smelled like him only to find it empty. The ache deepened at the thought. So she nodded, letting Zoey tug her toward the penthouse. The place buzzed faintly with post-concert energy, stage clothes draped over chairs, half-finished snacks on the counter, but it felt warm. Lived in. Safe. Zoey dragged her to the oversized couch, already piling blankets into a nest around her. "Here. I'll even let you steal my favorite one," she said with a teasing grin, though her voice stayed soft. Mira dropped a pillow beside her and sat down with a sigh. "Don't get too comfortable. You snore." Rumi managed a laugh, small, tired, but real. She tucked her phone close, curling into the blankets as Zoey flopped down beside her and Mira leaned against the armrest. The city glowed through the tall windows, soul alive with neon and noise. But in the penthouse, it was quiet, just the three of them, breathing the same air, carrying the same unspoken promise that no one would be left alone tonight. Rumi's eyes fluttered shut, exhaustion finally pulling her under. The last thing she felt was Zoe's hand resting lightly on her shoulder, Myra's steady presence at her back, and the faint buzz of the still-connected call pressed against her chest. Naruto was asleep. She was surrounded. And for the first time since he left, the ache eased enough for her to dream. Rumi drifted, the city's neon glow blurring into darkness as sleep pulled her under. But it wasn't the usual darkness. It was thick, heavy, the kind that pressed against her chest until she could barely breathe. Her patterns stirred faintly, violet threads curling across her arms as if answering some distant call. She opened her eyes and found herself standing in a forest. Not Soul's gentle green, but something twisted, suffocating, every tree weeping black sap. The air reeked of rot, the silence sharp as blades. And then she heard it. Naruto's voice. She turned, her heart slamming against her ribs, and there he was staggering through the shadows, his blade glowing faint orange against the dark. His body was tense, his movements sharp, but his face God's, his face. It was broken. Figures closed in on him, half-formed demons, their voices warped but chillingly familiar. They screamed accusations, spat hatred. And Rumi felt her stomach twist when she recognized some of the names on their lips: Jiraiya, Kakashi, Sakura. People Naruto once loved. But he kept moving. One step. Then another. His shoulders shook, his jaw clenched tight, but he didn't stop. And then. Her own voice rang out. Please. Naruto, save me. She froze, every drop of blood draining from her. Her dream self begged and sobbed, struggling against an unseen hand, crying words she had never spoken but that hit her like knives. You're my North Star. Don't leave me. Please. Naruto's face cracked open at the sound. His whole body trembled as he looked toward her, eyes raw, crimson burning like fire, and for a heartbeat, she thought he would run to her. She wanted him to. She wanted to be saved. But then, with a shuddering breath, he turned away. He walked. Every step like breaking glass. And when her dream self screamed, the sound ripped the air apart. Rumi fell to her knees, sobs racking her chest, even as she knew it wasn't real. Knew it was some echo, some vision bleeding through the Hanmoon. Yet the pain felt real. His pain. When she jerked awake, the penthouse was quiet, the city lights still glowing through the window. Zoey and Mira were asleep nearby, the steady rhythm of their breathing grounding her. But her phone was still pressed to her chest, the call still connected. Naruto's faint breathing came through, steady, unbroken. Her fingers trembled as she touched the glass. Tears slid hot down her cheeks. I'm here, she whispered into the dark. Even in your worst dreams, I'll find you. The Hanmoon pulsed faintly violet gold, and for the briefest moment, she thought she felt his heartbeat echo against hers. Rumi stirred awake, dawn's light filtering pale and thin through the penthouse windows. Her phone was still in her hand, screen dim against her palm. For a heartbeat, she thought she'd see him there, Naruto, slumped against the wall, faint smile curving his lips as he slept to the sound of her voice. But the call had ended. Her chest caved as she sat up too quickly, heart pounding like she'd lost him all over again. Then her screen buzzed. A message. Naruto, on to the next trial. Thank you for guiding me last night. I love you, North Star. Her breath broke. The tears came before she could stop them, hot and unyielding. She pressed the phone to her chest like it could stop the ache, like the words could crawl inside her and patch the hollow left by his absence. She read the message once. Twice. 3 times. Each time slower, tracing every letter with her eyes until she felt she could recite it back to him word for word. As if memorizing it would keep him safe. As if clinging to his words could shield him from the horrors waiting on the other side of the trial. Her lips trembled into a broken smile. "You idiot," she whispered, voice raw. "You think you're thanking me, but I'm the one who needs you." The Han moon pulsed faintly along her skin, warm and violet, thrumming in rhythm with her heartbeat. His presence lingered there, a tether she refused to let go of. Finally, she tucked the phone beneath her pillow, curling tighter beneath the blankets. Zoe's soft snores and Myra's steady breathing filled the quiet, anchors in the dark. Rumi closed her eyes, clutching the words in her mind like a mantra. "I love you, North Star." She repeated them until sleep took her again, as if her faith alone could carry him through the fire. The next day Naruto went to the dais and knelt as hunters and elders filed in. Naruto remained kneeling, the stone floor cold beneath him, his back straight and unyielding. The hunters lining the walls no longer looked at him with unease or suspicion, their eyes now held respect. They had seen him endure the trial of fire, walking out scarred yet unbroken. They had seen him survive the trial of wind, tears strkng his face yet never faltering. Very few hunters in training ever passed one trial. Fewer still passed two. He knelt stoic, his breathing steady, while Elder Tokiyama rose from his seat. The old man's staff tapped once against the stone, silencing the murmurs around the chamber. His voice carried with solemn weight as Ayaka translated beside him. "You have passed the trial of fire, proving your endurance. You have passed the trial of wind, proving your ability to adapt even in sorrow. Your will, hunter, is admirable." The room seemed to hold its breath. "This next test," Tokiyama intoned, "is the trial of earth. It will prove whether you can bear the weight of a true hunter." His gaze sharpened, heavy as stone. "Many times, you will put your life on the line. Many times, there will seem to be no hope. Yet the innocents the people have only you. You must be their shield, their wall, their unshakable ground. A hunter cannot falter. A hunter must be the rock that stands when the mountain crumbles." Naruto's eyes lifted, steady, violet patterns faintly pulsing at his arms. Tokiyama's staff struck the floor again. "Your task is this: you will protect a single rabbit until sunrise. It will be your charge, your innocent. Many hunters will come for it. They will strike at you, at your guard, at your resolve. If the rabbit survives the night, you pass. If it falls, you fail. There is no between." Murmurs rose again from the hunters, some disbelieving, some grim. Everyone knew this trial. Most who faced it failed. Naruto bowed his head once, slow and deliberate. His voice came quiet but steady. "Then I'll protect it. Even if I have to die on this floor, it won't be touched." The chamber stilled at his words. Even Tokiyama's eyes flickered, just slightly, at the steel in his tone. Naruto walked back to his quarters with a calm, steady stride. Confidence radiated off him, not arrogance, but the kind forged from scars and sleepless nights. He'd carried the weight of the world before. Held it until his arms shook, until his spirit bled raw. He had smiled for the people when he wanted to collapse. He had bled for the innocents until his veins felt empty. He had rallied nations, given hope, fought until the last dying breath was not his own but still his burden to bear. And yes, he had fled once. When the weight grew too crushing, when hope flickered out. That wound still stung deep. Would he do it again if cornered? No. Not anymore. He clenched his fists as he walked, his jaw set. "I am Naruto Uzumaki. If demons want to slaughter innocents under my watch, they'll have to get through me first. I'll be the mountain. I won't crumble." The determination settled in him like stone, heavy but grounding. By the time he reached his quarters, the weight of resolve pressed harder than exhaustion. He strpped down, muscles aching as steam rose from the waiting bath. Sliding into the water, he let the warmth bite at his skin, loosening the knots in his shoulders. For a rare moment, he allowed himself stillness. But stillness didn't mean silence. He needed to see her. Naruto grabbed his phone, droplets trailing down his arm, and tapped the call button. The screen rang twice before it connected, his heart leaping. Naruto leaned back in the bath, phone balanced in one wet hand. The call finally connected, but instead of Rumi's face, Bobby's filled the screen. "What the hell?" Bobby yelped, eyes going wide before he slammed a hand over his face. "Naruto, put it away. Why are you naked?" Naruto almost dropped the phone into the water. "I'm taking a bath. This is normal." "Normal?" Bobby screeched. "You just flashed me like some kind of nudist. What's wrong with you? Rumi's gonna kill me if she finds out." Naruto's face turned beet red. "Why do you even have her phone?" Before Bobby could answer, the phone shifted again. Zoey's wide eyes appeared, sparkling like she'd just won the lottery. "Oh my God. Rumi, your man's a total XHBTNST. You didn't tell us he was into this." "Zoey, why?" Naruto spluttered, sinking lower into the bubbles. Myra's head popped into view behind Zoey, her expression flat as ever. She raised an eyebrow, voice dripping with dry judgment. "Figures. The great Uzumaki Naruto, loved by all, is a shameless pervert." "I'm not a pervert." Naruto shouted, half standing in outrage before realizing he was making it worse. He dropped back into the tub with a splash. Zoey clutched the phone tighter, cackling. "Oh, this is going on record. World's strongest nudist, Naruto Uzumaki. I can see the headlines already." Mira smirked faintly, arms crossed. "At this point, I'm convinced he's promiscuous. FaceTiming half-dressed, flashing people who aren't his girlfriend. What's next, Naruto? OnlyFans?" Naruto looked like he might combust. It was an accident. This isn't what it looks like." The girls were relentless. Zoey leaned closer to the screen, her grin wicked. "You know, Mira, I'm starting to see why Rumi's always glowing. Must be all the late-night FaceTime sessions." Mira pretended to nod seriously. That explains the stamina training too." "Stop." Naruto practically begged, his ears scarlet. "I didn't do anything. Rumi, help me." Finally, mercifully, the phone shifted again, and there was Rumi, her face red from secondhand embarrassment. She pinched the bridge of her nose. "Give me the phone, now." Zoey whined but handed it over, still giggling uncontrollably. Mira shook her head, muttering, "Promiscuous," under her breath. Naruto slouched lower in the tub, cheeks still burning from the chaos. He could still hear Zoey's laughter echoing in his ears and Myra's dry, promiscuous, jab haunting him. Finally, mercifully, the screen stilled on Rumi's face. Her hair was damp, loose around her shoulders, her violet patterns faintly pulsing against the glow of the couch lamp. She looked tired but appealing, and the sight of her eased something heavy in his chest. "Rumi," he said softly, the dramatics fading away, "your friends are scarier than half the demons I've fought." Her lips curved faintly, but there was no hiding the tenderness in her eyes. "That's what you get for FaceTiming from a bath." He rubbed the back of his neck, sheepish. Yeah. Worth it, though. I just needed to see you." Her expression gentled, the weight she'd been carrying flickering across her features. For a moment, they stayed like that, quiet, steady, before she finally exhaled and said, "We've got an event tomorrow. The Saja boys are holding an autograph signing, and management's pushing us to show up. Cross-promotion, publicity, you know how it is." Naruto's shoulders squared, the water rippling around him. His voice was calm but firm. "The Saja boys? So it's them again." Rumi nodded, her patterns faintly shimmering violet. "Yeah. They haven't crossed any lines yet, but this puts us too close. Closer than I'd like." His jaw tightened, but his gaze on her never wavered. "Then don't let them rattle you. You know what they are. You know what you are." If they push, you stand your ground. Don't give them the chance to make you doubt. Something in her chest steadied at his words. Her lips trembled, but she pressed them together and nodded. I won't. Naruto leaned forward slightly, his voice softening. You're stronger than they'll ever be, Rumi. Stronger than even you realize. That's why I can breathe easy knowing you're out there. Her throat tightened, her eyes burning, but she managed a small, determined smile. And you're still carrying too much. Even through a screen, I can see it. He chuckled faintly, rubbing a hand over his face. Maybe. But seeing you like this reminds me why I don't crumble. They sat there in silence for a few breaths, just looking at each other, the distance between them shrinking until it felt like they were in the same room. You said it yourself, Rumi whispered, her patterns glowing faintly as her hand brushed the screen. If you fall apart, it's with me. And if I falter, it's with you. Naruto's eyes softened, his smile boyish but raw. Always. And for that moment, it didn't matter that miles of ocean and duty stretched between them. The bond felt unbreakable. Naruto sighed, thumb hovering over the screen for a second before he finally hung up. The quiet that followed wasn't heavy anymore, just steady, like a stone at rest. He wasn't worried about the trial. He'd carried worse burdens. He could carry this one too. Sliding out of the bath, he dried off, tugged on fresh clothes, and collapsed onto the bed. The exhaustion caught him quick, pulling him under into a deep, dreamless sleep. Hours later, a sharp knock jolted him awake. The room was dim, the sky outside already bruised with twilight. Uzumaki, a voice called from the hall. A hunter, formal and clipped. It's time. Naruto sat up, running a hand through his hair, the last of the haze slipping away. His jaw tightened, but his heart was steady. The trial of Earth waited. And he was ready to meet it. The hunter at the door said nothing more as he led Naruto through the torchlit corridors. Their footsteps echoed against stone, steady and cold, until the passage widened into an open courtyard ringed by ancient walls. The evening sky was bruised violet, the first stars struggling against the dusk. At the center stood Elder Tokiyama, his staff planted firmly in the ground. Around him, 7 hunters waited in silence, their weapons sheathed but their eyes sharp. Veterans, every one of them. Naruto could tell from their posture, the way they breathed. These weren't recruits. These were predators. Tokiyama gestured, and a smaller hunter stepped forward, carrying something cradled in his arms. A rabbit. White-furred, trembling, eyes wide with fear. The hunter set it down at Naruto's feet. This is the trial of Earth, Tokiyama intoned, Ayaka's voice translating at his side. You have proven endurance. You have proven adaptation. Now you must prove resolve. As a hunter, you will be the shield when no one else can. The rock that does not yield. He nodded toward the rabbit, its tiny body quivering against the dirt. You will guard this creature until sunrise. It does not matter how many come against you. 7 skilled hunters now, and more after, until the night ends. If it survives, you pass. If it dies, Tokiyama's eyes narrowed, hard as stone, you fail. There is no middle ground. The hunters surrounding the circle shifted, hands resting lightly on their blades. Naruto crouched, scooping the rabbit into his hands. Its heartbeat fluttered wildly against his palm, fragile, desperate. He tucked it against his chest, and when he rose, his expression was calm, steady. He met Tokiyama's gaze. I understand. The elder raised his staff. Then let the trial begin. The hunters unsheathed their weapons in unison. Steel rang in the air like the first peal of thunder before a storm. Naruto pulled out a steel sword. He set his feet, rabbit pressed close to his chest, eyes narrowing. All right, he muttered under his breath, resolve burning like fire in his chest. Come at me. I won't break. The staff cracked against the stone, and the trial began. 7 hunters surged at once, no hesitation, no mercy. They weren't here to spar. They were here to break him. Naruto tightened his grip on the hand-and-a-half sword they'd given him, the steel unfamiliar compared to his soul blade. It was heavier, clumsier, but it was all he had. The rabbit squirmed once in the crook of his arm before stilling, trusting him in the way only small, helpless things could. The first hunter struck from the left, a downward slash meant to cleave him in half. Naruto twisted, blade meeting blade, sparks spitting into the air. Before he could breathe, another drove forward with a move, steel scraping his ribs as he barely deflected it. Pain bloomed hot and sharp. He gritted his teeth and shoved them back, pivoting on his heel, keeping his body between the rabbit and every strike. "Come on," one of the hunters barked, voice full of challenge. "Don't just guard, fight." Naruto's only answer was silence. He wouldn't kill them. Wouldn't even maim them. Not for this. A third blade caught his thigh, hot blood running down his leg. He staggered, but his stance held firm. They came like a storm, 3 cutting high, 2 low, 1 circling behind. Every block rattled his bones, every deflection left him slower, weaker. Steel kissed his skin again and again across his forearm, his shoulder, the shallow line of his cheek. He bled. Gods, he bled. But his eyes never wavered. His arm never loosened around the rabbit. When one hunter tried to feint past him, Naruto snarled and drove his boot into the man's chest, sending him skidding back across the stone. The others pressed harder, as if trying to punish him for it. His sword rang against theirs in a rhythm of violence, each impact hammering his muscles to fire. By the time the first wave slowed, his chest was heaving, sweat stinging his cuts, his clothes torn and bloody. The hunters circled, frustrated but wary. Naruto wiped blood from his lip with the back of his hand, then reset his stance. The rabbit trembled against him, but still lived. His voice was hoarse, but unbroken. "You can cut me down 1,000 times, he growled, eyes blazing, "but you won't touch what I'm sworn to protect." The hunters tightened their grips on their blades. The night was just beginning. The courtyard smelled of iron and sweat, the stones already slick with blood. His blood. Naruto's breath tore in and out of him, ragged, but his grip on the rabbit never slipped. Its tiny heartbeat thudded against his ribs, a constant reminder. Protect it. Protect them all. The first 7 hunters had been hard. The 10 after them harder still. But now there were 20. 30. Shadows fanned across the walls, their blades flashing in the torchlight, their faces set like stone. Naruto's chest heaved, his hand shaking around the hilt of the half-sword. Mortal steel, heavier now, sticky with blood. He dragged the blade up, planted his feet, and whispered through clenched teeth. "Come on, then." They came. The first strike glanced off his guard, rattling his bones. The second slashed his thigh, hot blood spilling down his leg. He pivoted, drove the hilt into a chest, heard the air explode out of the man's lungs. But another blade was already there, grazing his arm, leaving fire in its wake. He ducked. Rolled. The rabbit squeaked but stayed tucked close to his chest. He sprang up, slammed his shoulder into a hunter, twisting to send another crashing into the dirt. Still more poured in. A blade rang against his ribs, cutting shallow. Another slashed his cheek, the sting sharp. His vision blurred for half a heartbeat, but he forced his head up. His resolve burned hotter than the pain. Not giving up, he rasped, and his blade sang through the air. He flowed not as clean as before, not as fast, but unyielding. His body screamed. His muscles shook. Yet every strike he made was aimed to disable, not kill. A crack of a hilt across a temple. The sweep of a leg. The slam of an elbow. He stumbled. A net flew past, missing his shoulder by inches. He twisted, nearly falling, then rammed his sword into the ground to steady himself. Hunters swarmed him, blades crashing like waves. Slash. Slash. BLD spilled, slicking his side. His shoulder sagged under the weight of his own arm, but he gritted his teeth and shoved forward. A stronger hunter lunged. The man's strike was precise, fast, his blade biting deep across Naruto's forearm. He hissed, the pain blinding. His sword nearly fell but he clenched tighter. The rabbit's heartbeat thudded harder. Naruto bared his teeth, a snarl tearing free. He twisted, slammed his knee into the man's gut, and sent him sprawling. More. Always more. They came in waves, tireless, relentless. Cuts laced Naruto's arms, his legs. His skin was a map of pain, but his stance never crumbled. His knees buckled, but he forced them straight. His sword dragged for a heartbeat before he lifted it again. "I am the rock," he muttered, voice hoarse, almost broken. His eyes burned with a crimson spark. "You don't break me." A hunter's blade raked across his back. Another cracked against his ribs. He staggered, almost fell, but roared and pushed back, spinning with a burst of raw willpower that sent 3 hunters sprawling. His breath came in gasps now. His vision wavered. But the rabbit was safe. Always safe. Then the strongest yet stepped forward. An older hunter, scarred, his blade steady as a mountain. His strike came fast, a blur of steel. Naruto barely caught it, the force rattling through his entire frame. His knees hit stone, his arm shook, his side screamed from another cut, but he didn't drop the rabbit. Didn't let it touch the ground. The elder hunter pressed harder. Naruto's teeth ground together. His legs trembled. His back screamed. But he planted his feet, drew on that well of resolve deeper than BLD, and shoved back with a roar. The clash rang through the courtyard, echoing off the walls. The older hunter stumbled. Naruto stood, chest heaving, eyes wild, BLD streaming down his face but unbroken. The waves slowed, their numbers thinning as dawn's first gray light touched the wall. Naruto staggered, blade scraping stone, every inch of him screaming to collapse. But he still stood. The rabbit twitched its nose, alive, warm against his chest. And Naruto smirked, lips cracked, voice raw but steady. "You'll never take it from me." The horn blew. The trial ended. Hunters froze. Silence stretched, broken only by the sound of his ragged breathing. Naruto swayed, body torn and battered, but he raised the rabbit high for all to see. His smile was faint, weary, but unshakable. "Still standing," he whispered. "Still me." Then his knees gave out, and he dropped, not broken, not beaten, but spent cradling the rabbit against his chest like victory itself. The courtyard was silent except for Naruto's ragged breaths. His clothes hung in tatters, his body a patchwork of cuts and bruises. BLD soaked his arms, his legs, even streaked down his face. He had been pushed harder than anyone before him and still he stood, the rabbit safe in his arms. The elders watched from the balcony above, their faces carved with disbelief. This wasn't how the trial was meant to go. They had stacked the deck. No demon energy. No chakra. Not even the soul blade he'd relied on in the first trial. Just mortal steel and his own body. They had sent not only waves of young trainees but also seasoned hunters, veterans honed on real battlefields. Strikes meant to cripple, to break him. Blades cutting deeper, faster, harder with every hour. Any other candidate would have fallen before midnight. But Naruto hadn't. He had taken wounds that would have sent even their finest to their knees. Every time he was slashed across the ribs, he straightened. Every time his legs buckled, he pushed them steady again. When BLD blurred his vision, he fought half-blind. He had refused to let his demon energy heal him, forcing his body to endure with nothing but sheer willpower. By the last hour, he hadn't been surviving on strength. He had been surviving on resolve alone. One elder whispered, voice tight, impossible. No man no child could have borne that onslaught. Another's hands shook against her robes. We drove him past the breaking point. He should have collapsed, he should have. Elder Tokiyama said nothing at first. His gaze followed the boy below as Naruto swayed, blood dripping steadily onto the stone. The rabbit nestled against his chest, unscathed, breathing calmly as though it somehow knew it had always been safe. The old man's jaw tightened. And yet, Tokiyama said finally, his voice carrying through the stunned air, he still stands. The chamber behind them was silent. Some elders looked shaken, others furious, but none could argue with what they had witnessed. Naruto Uzumaki battered, bleeding, unhealed had proven himself unyielding. Naruto was carried through the compound like a fallen warrior, hunters clearing the path with bowed heads. None spoke. The silence said everything: respect, shame, all. They had been told to break him. Instead, he had shown them what it meant to endure. By the time they reached the healer's hall, his blood had crusted thick against his skin. His breaths were shallow, ragged, but steady. The healers moved quickly, washing wounds, binding cuts, forcing bitter medicine between his lips. Demon energy still flared faintly beneath his skin, fighting to heal, but he'd held it back so long that his body was screaming. Hours passed. Finally, Naruto's eyes fluttered open. The ceiling above him was plain stone, lit by lanterns. His body ached like lead, every limb bruised and raw. But when he shifted his arm, he realized the rabbit was curled in the crook of it, safe, unharmed. He smiled faintly, though his lips were cracked. Still made it, huh? You did. Naruto turned his head. At his bedside knelt Ayaka, her cloak rumpled, eyes red from lack of sleep. She clutched the edge of the bed with both hands, staring at him like she wasn't sure he was real. You passed, she whispered, voice trembling. Even though they made it harder. Everyone knew. We were told to cut you down if we could. She stopped, shaking her head. But you wouldn't fall. Even when you should have. Naruto exhaled slowly, eyes drifting shut again. That's what it means to be a wall. To be the ground people can stand on. Ayaka's throat tightened, but she said nothing. From outside the healer's hall, boots clicked against stone. A shadow passed over the doorway before Tokiyama's voice carried in, calm and heavy. He endured. More than any of you expected. Let the record show, the half-BLD stood firm. Naruto didn't move. He was already drifting back into sleep, the faintest smile still on his face. And though the elders would twist it into another trial, another test for the hunters who knelt earlier, and for Ayaka at his side, the truth had already been carved into stone. He had endured what no one else could. Uzumaki Naruto was unyielding. Naruto woke the next evening to the sound of running water. At first, he thought it was the healer's basin, but when he sat up, the room was gone. He was standing barefoot on stone that rippled like liquid beneath his feet. A vast pool stretched out before him, the surface black as glass. Lanterns flickered along the edges, their flames reflected in endless ripples. At the far side stood the council of elders, their robes stark against the glow. Tokiyama's voice carried, deep and unwavering. You have endured the trial of fire. You have adapted in the trial of wind. You have stood unyielding in the trial of earth. Now comes the final task, the trial of water. Ayaka's translation was quiet, but unnecessary. Naruto understood. Tokiyama lifted his staff, and the rippling stone beneath Naruto's feet gave way, plunging him into the cold. The water swallowed him whole. It wasn't like drowning. It was like sinking into memory. Images swirled around him, hazy and sharp all at once, every battle he had fought, every phase he had failed, every innocent he had saved. He saw hunters collapsing under the weight of their own resolve, comrades twisted into corruption, elders bowing to traditions that broke their own children. And then, clearer than all of them, Rumi. Smiling. Singing. Calling him her North Star. The water pressed harder, a voice curling through the depths. What is your place? Images flickered, a dolphin leaping, then fading. Not a guardian, bound to one shore. A hippo surfaced, then sank. Not a stagnant protector, rooted in one place. An ox appeared, horns gleaming, then dissolved. Not a warrior bound to the plow of tradition. The voice mocked. You are no priestess. Too wild, too young to guide. Where do we place you, half BLD? You are not a sealer of the Han moon, though you have already strengthened it across the sea. Your touch carries its power, but it is not your role. Naruto's fists clenched. His lungs ached, his body screamed for air, but his chest did not burn. This wasn't about survival. This was about choice. What am I? I'm me. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. His voice thundered through the abyss. I'll protect them all, humans, hunters, demons who deserve a second chance. I'll protect Rumi. I'll protect every kid who feels like I did. I don't care if I don't fit your boxes. Call me monster, call me savior, I don't care. My place. His patterns flared crimson-violet, light burning like fire through the dark. The water churned, waves rolling outward as the Han moon pulsed in answer, glowing faintly gold for an instant, like it was listening. Is wherever I'm needed most. The voice stilled. Then it cackled. Then I know what you are. An image of a great black scythe shimmered above him, gleaming with terrible majesty. A devourer. A reaper. Not bound to one place, but to the endless work of cutting down what cannot be saved. Few in history have borne this role, none in living memory. You will not guard. You will not guide. You will devour corruption itself. The pool erupted, bursting into steam. The scythe lingered in the mist, then dissolved into nothing. Naruto staggered but did not fall. He stood on solid stone again, soaked but unbroken. The elders shielded their eyes as the last ripples of light faded. Tokiyama lowered his staff, his face unreadable. One elder whispered, voice trembling. A devourer. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Another hissed, that title has not been spoken in centuries. Not since the last reaper walked among us, another said, half in awe, half in dread. Tokiyama's gaze lingered on Naruto, iron-hard but edged with something else, respect. Slowly, he bowed his head. You have passed the trial of water. The trials are complete. You bear the mantle of devourer, a title not claimed in living memory. Not curse. Not burden. Legacy. Ayaka's breath shook as she translated, barely able to form the words. The hunters gathered in the shadows dropped to their knees, not from command, but instinct. Recognition. Reverence. The council did not disperse immediately. As Naruto turned to leave, Tokiyama's staff struck stone, halting him. Wait, the elder said, his voice steady. Before you go, you must understand what your new title means. The other elders shifted uneasily, but none interrupted. Tokiyama's gaze fixed on Naruto, sharp and deliberate. You are the devourer now. That is not a name we give lightly. For centuries, that role has been dormant. The devourer is not the shield who guards the gates. He is not the priest who guides the next generation. He is the spear, the one we move into the heart of corruption when all else fails. Ayaka translated with a shaky breath, though Naruto didn't need the words. He understood the weight. Tokiyama continued, his tone grave. Asia has many wounds. Places where demons nest, where corruption bleeds unchecked. Seals break, villages vanish, and even hunters are consumed. That is where you will be sent. Where the fight is fiercest. Where the cost is highest. One of the younger elders added reluctantly, you will not be stationed here. You are not meant to guard borders or train recruits. You will move as the blade does, cutting into the enemy, striking cores, purging what the rest of us cannot. Naruto stood silent for a long moment, letting it sink in. His jaw tightened, but his eyes were clear. So I'm the one who goes where no one else can. The one who takes the fight to them. Tokiyama inclined his head. Yes. The spear. The devourer. Naruto gave a faint, tired smile. Then I'll hit harder than they've ever seen. The chamber fell quiet again, the elders' faces unreadable. Some approving. Some wary. Some both. Naruto bowed low. Thank you for the trials. Then he straightened, shoulders squared. But if I'm going to be your spear, I want my residency in Seoul. The elders stirred, murmurs rippling. One frowned. Seoul. That city is crowded. Distracting. Not fit for a hunter's base. Naruto shrugged, casual but firm. Doesn't matter. I've already got roots there. Connections. And I don't just mean friends. I've been writing, keeping records of my travels. If I'm supposed to move across Asia, I need somewhere to come back to. A home. A place to breathe. After everything you put me through, that's the least you can give me. Ayaka hesitated to translate, cheeks pale, but the message was clear even without words. The elders shifted again, remembering. The forest exploding with light, the endless onslaught of the trial of Earth, the way he stood, bleeding but unbroken, when any other hunter would have fallen. Tokiyama's staff struck the floor. Crack. You speak boldly, Uzumaki Naruto, he said. Then, after a pause, his voice softened just a fraction. But perhaps you've earned it. Seoul will be recognized as your base. Naruto dipped his head in thanks, relief curling into a boyish grin. Before he could leave, Ayaka stepped forward, her voice cutting through the silence. There's something else you should understand. The Han moon, it's powerful, yes, but it isn't everything. Naruto frowned. What do you mean? Ayaka clasped her hands, reciting what she had learned since childhood. The Han moon was built to hold Jiraiya in check. To stop him from unleashing his full strength. But it doesn't stop lesser demons. They roam free. They fester, hide, and strike at the weak. That's why the hunters exist. That's why you were tested. The Han moon is the wall. But she pressed a hand to her chest, we are the sword standing in front of it. Naruto's patterns thrummed faintly, resonating with her words. And Huntrix? Where do they fit into this? Ayaka's eyes flicked to the elders before returning to him. Huntrix inspires. They shine so the public feels safe. They are the skin of the apple. But the association is the core, the ones who bleed in silence, who strike down demons while the world sleeps. Her voice softened. Huntrix distracts. The hunters protect. Naruto stood quiet for a long moment, then tapped his chest where his patterns glowed faintly violet red. He thought of Rumi's voice, her smile, the way she called him her North Star. Then I'll be both, he said at last. If I'm your spear, I'll fight in the dark. But if the world needs light, his grin spread, boyish and unshaken. I'll shine with her. However I can. Ayaka's lips parted in surprise, almost smiling despite herself. Even Tokiyama's stern mask cracked, not into approval, but into respect. Naruto shifted his bag onto his shoulder. Thanks for explaining. But just so you know, his grin sharpened. I'm not just a piece of your apple. I'll be the whole DMN orchard if I have to. Ayaka let out a short, startled laugh. The elders shifted again, uneasy but silent. Naruto turned and walked toward the doors, voice low, steady, certain. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got someone waiting. Back in his quarters, he packed quickly. The trials were behind him, his role decided, his title carved into stone. But none of that mattered compared to what pulled him forward. Rumi. Her laugh. Her voice. The way she looked at him like he was more than a weapon. Naruto slung the bag over his shoulder, stepped into the night, and whispered into the stars. "I'm coming home, Rumi." Naruto packed with a speed that surprised even him. Every motion was sharp, decisive, folding clothes, strapping his gear, sliding his blade into its sheath. For once, it wasn't about duty. It wasn't about the association or titles or demons. It was about Rumi. Every thought of her, her laugh, her smile, her voice calling him North Star, pulled him faster. By the time the bag was slung over his shoulder, his pulse was racing with anticipation. He barely noticed the bows of hunters in the hall as he left the compound. He just kept walking, every step lighter, like the weight of the trials was finally gone. At the airport, he boarded the first red-eye flight out. His grin refused to leave, even when the stewardess gave him a funny look as he bounced his knee impatiently the whole ride. Hours blurred into minutes. He barely tasted the ramen he ordered, barely felt the exhaustion in his bones. Seoul was waiting. She was waiting. By the time his boots hit Korean soil, the city was alive with neon and noise. Naruto tugged his hood low, slipping through the crowd with his bag slung across his back. The Huntrix building gleamed ahead, its lights spilling across the skyline like a beacon. His heart clenched at the sight. He could have just walked through the front doors. Could have taken the elevator straight to her. But where was the fun in that? He wanted to surprise her, wanted to see her face light up when he showed up without warning. So instead, he found the shadow of the building, crouched low, and began to climb. His fingers and feet found purchase easily, every muscle working in rhythm. Higher and higher, past glowing windows and shimmering signs. The city stretched out beneath him, but all he could think of was the girl he loved just floors above. Near the top, he slowed. Voices carried in the night air, faint but clear. He froze, pressing himself flat against the wall. Two figures stood on the roof, their shapes silhouetted against the floodlights. Naruto narrowed his eyes. His instincts sharpened. One of them her. He'd know that stance, that voice, anywhere. Rumi. And the other. His blood ran cold. The demon. The one they'd crossed paths with before. The one who had hidden behind a boyband smile. Naruto tensed, ready to launch himself up, but then he froze again. Because the demon leaned in. And Rumi didn't pull away. Their lips met. For a split second, Naruto's breath stopped. The rooftop spun. His grip faltered on the ledge. He had faced armies. He had carried nations. He had bled in silence. But nothing had ever hit him like this. Naruto's fingers dug into the concrete ledge, claws threatening to crack the stone. His chest tightened, his heart hammering in a way no battle had ever managed. Rumi. His Rumi. She was standing so close to him, to that demon, her patterns faintly glowing under the soul night. He should have been the one there, teasing her, holding her. Not this thing wearing a boy's skin. The kiss wasn't long. Barely more than a brush. But to Naruto, it stretched forever, carving into him with every heartbeat. He nearly called out. Nearly leapt onto the rooftop, blade in hand, demanding answers. But his voice caught in his throat. Because what if it wasn't a trick? What if she chose this? The thought crushed him harder than any blow from the trials. He let his body press flat against the wall, his breath ragged but silent. His patterns pulsed faintly, betraying the storm inside him, but he forced them down. He couldn't be seen. Not yet. The demon leaned closer, whispering something Naruto couldn't hear. Rumi's expression flickered, conflicted, maybe pained. But from this distance, he couldn't tell. And that not knowing burned more than the sight itself. Naruto clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay still. To watch. To endure. Just like he always had. But deep inside, something cracked. Naruto stayed there, pressed against the rooftop ledge, every muscle screaming to leap forward. His claws dug into the concrete until flecks of stone crumbled away under his grip. But he didn't move. He couldn't. If he burst in now, half blind with rage and hurt, he might lose her for good. Maybe this was his punishment for daring to think he could have both Rumi and the life of a hunter. Maybe the trials hadn't ended at all. His chest rose and fell, shallow, uneven. Her laugh faint, nervous floated to him across the rooftop. It used to be his laugh. The sound she saved for him. Naruto forced his body back down the wall, slow and silent, every inch feeling like a betrayal of his own heart. When his feet touched the alley below, he sagged against the shadowed brick, his patterns flickering weakly under his skin. The Seoul night was loud around him, neon signs buzzing, traffic honking, laughter spilling from bars. But all he heard was the echo of her voice, all he saw was the press of her lips against someone else's. He dragged a hand over his face, nails scraping against his skin, and laughed once hollow, broken. "Guess I was never the North Star after all," he whispered. Then he pulled his hood up, swallowed the ache clawing his chest, and melted into the crowd. Naruto crouched low on the rooftop, the Seoul skyline glowing behind him. His heart raced with excitement. He was finally home, finally close enough to surprise her. But then he froze. There, under the hum of neon lights, Rumi stood across from the demon boy they had bumped into before. Their voices carried just enough on the wind. The boy leaned in, his smirk faint, his intent clear. Rumi's patterns flared sharply violet, her hands snapping up to stop him. "What do you think you're doing?" He blinked, tilting his head as though genuinely confused. "What do you mean? I thought this was where it was going." Naruto's fist tightened against the rooftop edge, but he didn't wait another heartbeat. He stood, voice sharp and unshakable as it cut through the night air. Naruto's voice cut the night clean in two. "She has a boyfriend." The rooftop stilled. Rumi's head snapped toward the sound, her patterns flaring, her breath hitching, and then her whole face broke into light. "Naruto." Her voice cracked on his name, half disbelief, half laughter. The ache of days apart shattered in an instant. Joy swelled through her, unstoppable. "You're here." Naruto stood tall against the Seoul skyline, shoulders squared but his grin soft, all warmth for her. "Yeah," he said, steady and sure. "I told you I'd come home." Jinu froze where he stood. The easy charm he'd worn just seconds ago vanished like smoke. His eyes darted from Rumi's glowing patterns to Naruto's scarred, unshakable frame. And then it hit him. Not just that they knew each other but how they knew each other. This was Uzumaki Naruto. The one who had killed Indra, the one even demons whispered about. Jinu's blood ran cold. To be caught here, on this rooftop, leaning in on her, what would that look like to a man who had slain Indra himself? He couldn't breathe. Couldn't speak. The weight of Naruto's gaze pinned him harder than any blade. And then, without a word, Jinu bolted. He fled into the night, his cloak snapping behind him, desperation in every step. Rumi didn't watch him go. She only had eyes for the man who'd come back early, for the boy whose smile steadied her even now. Naruto reached for her, voice low but full, calling her by the name that was theirs alone. North Star. Her heart caught. Tears blurred her vision as she stumbled forward, closing the gap between them with trembling hands. Naruto. And under the Seoul sky, with the city humming below, she felt whole again. Naruto hunched over his phone, tongue sticking out in concentration. "Alright, let's see what this wise sage called Google has to say." He typed slowly, each letter taking effort, dinner date ideas. Then, satisfied, he proudly hit send. A moment later, Bobby's phone buzzed. He frowned, reading aloud, dinner date ideas? What? With a sigh, he typed back, for Rumi. Naruto's eyes widened at the reply. What? It already knows. This sage is all-seeing. He frantically typed back, yes. And also look up ramen recipes. Bobby squinted at his screen. Why the hell is he asking me this? He tapped back, try movies. And you eat too much ramen. Naruto dropped his phone like it had burned him. How? It even knows about my diet. This thing is a sage. He picked it back up and typed furiously, I don't know how you know all this stuff, but I'll find you. Bobby's eyebrow twitched as he replied, I'm Rumi's manager. Naruto growled, glaring at the glowing screen. So it's a liar too, huh? He typed back with righteous fury, no. That's Bobby. How dare you pretend to be him, wise Google. Across the city, Bobby stared at his phone in pure confusion. What the hell did I do to deserve this? Naruto didn't hesitate. He crushed Rumi against him, lips finding hers like he'd been holding his breath for days and only now remembered how to breathe. Rumi melted into him, her hands gripping the back of his shirt like she'd never let go again. Every second without her, every trial, illusion, night of silence burned away in that kiss. The elders, the hunters, the devourer title gone. For once, there was no weight on his shoulders. Just her. He pulled back, gasping softly, his forehead resting against hers. You don't know how much I needed this, he whispered, voice rough with truth. Days felt like years without you. Her smile trembled as she kissed him again, fiercer this time, like she was trying to make up for every mile, every hour apart. Then don't you dare leave me like that again, she breathed against his lips. I thought, her voice cracked. I thought I was going to lose you. Naruto silenced her with another kiss, slower, lingering, steady. You'll never lose me. Not now, not ever. The rooftop wind tugged at her hair, Soul's neon reflecting off the tears still shining in her eyes. She was his North Star, pulling him home no matter how far he wandered, and he wasn't letting her go. When their lips finally parted, she studied him carefully, fingertips brushing his cheek. You've gotten thinner, she murmured. They really pushed you that hard? Naruto chuckled, low but tired. I've been through worse. But yeah, they wanted to see if I'd break. Didn't matter what they threw at me, I just kept telling myself, Rumi's waiting. Don't stop walking. Her lips parted, a shaky laugh slipping out as she pressed her head to his chest. Idiot. You don't have to kill yourself to prove anything to me. He smiled into her hair, voice quiet but firm. It wasn't about proving something. It was about surviving long enough to come back to you. Her violet patterns shimmered faintly, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. She looked up again, eyes shining. You're not alone anymore, Naruto. If you stumble, I'll catch you. If you fall, I'll pull you back up. I don't care if you're the devourer, the spear, or whatever title they throw at you. You're mine. Always. His grin broke through the heaviness in his chest, boyish and real. That's all I needed to hear, North Star. He cupped her cheek, their foreheads pressed together. For a long, precious moment, silence carried more weight than words. Just the two of them, Soul's neon spilling violet and gold across the rooftop, the hum of the city distant and unreal. Eventually, Rumi laughed softly, wiping her eyes. You should have seen Zoey and Mira earlier. They were losing their minds over this boy band, she caught herself, biting her lip. Never mind. We'll talk about it later. Tonight's not for them. Naruto raised an eyebrow, but let it go. He leaned in, brushing his lips against her temple. Fine. Tonight's ours. And with that, he kissed her again, slow, lingering, the kind that said more than words ever could. Hours later, after a couple more kisses, they finally pulled themselves away from the rooftop glow. Their hands never parted as they slipped down into the city, through the quiet of the building, until they reached the apartment that had always felt more like home than anywhere else. The moment the door opened, a blur of fur launched across the floor. Kakashi. Naruto laughed as the dog bounded into him, paws thumping against his chest. Naruto dropped his bag and crouched, hugging him tight, scratching behind his ears while the pup licked his face with frantic devotion. I missed you too, bud. Look at you, you're bigger already. Kakashi wagged so hard his whole body wobbled, whining as though afraid Naruto would vanish again if he blinked. His tail thumped once, like a heartbeat against the floor. Naruto's throat tightened, but he buried it in another scratch and kiss to the pup's head. Told you I'd come back. Behind them, Rumi leaned against the wall, arms folded, her smile softer than he'd ever seen it. Seeing Naruto like this alive, laughing, surrounded by warmth instead of ghosts made something unclench in her chest. For the first time since he left, she could breathe without the ache. They moved to the couch, Kakashi sprawling half on Naruto's lap like a sentry who refused to let go. Rumi curled against his side, her hand wrapped in his shirt like she needed to feel him solid and warm. Naruto rested his head back against the cushions and exhaled. The grin faded, replaced by something quieter, heavier. I should tell you what happened, he said at last, voice low. All of it. Naruto's voice was steady at first, but the longer he spoke, the heavier it became. He told her about the forest, how it pressed in like a living nightmare, how he carved through demons until the ground was ash, how the spider's malice nearly swallowed him whole. How everything shifted when the corruption finally broke, light spilling through the trees for the first time in centuries. Rumi's grip on his hand tightened as he spoke of the hunters. Not enemies, not monsters, but corrupted brothers and sisters, their soul blades blackened with malice. I had to cut them down to free them, Naruto said, his throat raw. It was the only way to release their souls. It hurt, Rumi. Gods, it hurt. But I made it through. He told her of the corridor to the illusions that forced him to face every doubt, every loss, even her. Then came the night of the rabbit. On the surface, a simple test protected until sunrise. But Naruto told her how endless it had felt. Hunters coming in waves, blades cutting him open, hour after hour of struggle. By the end I wasn't standing because of chakra or demon energy, he admitted quietly. I only had will left. Resolve. I couldn't let that rabbit die. Not when it was my charge. Rumi leaned closer, her patterns glowing faintly violet as if her very body ached to share the burden with him. And finally, he spoke of the water. How it pulled him down, showed him visions of who he was and who he wasn't. They tried to shove me into boxes: priest, warrior, guardian. None of them fit. So I told them the truth. That I'm me. That I'll protect whoever needs me, wherever I'm needed most. His eyes lifted to hers, burning crimson violet. And the water named me for it. The devourer. The spear. The one they'll send to strike at the worst of it. The words hung between them, heavy as stone. Rumi's thumb brushed softly along his jaw, her touch gentle against all the weight he carried. And you came back to me, she whispered. Not broken. Not lost. You. Naruto closed his eyes, pressing his forehead to hers, his voice low and hoarse. Always you. At their feet, Kakashi whined softly, tail thumping again as though to seal the vow. For the first time since the trials began, Naruto let himself lean into the quiet. No elders, no titles, no ghosts. Just Rumi's hand, her warmth, her voice anchoring him home. Naruto searched her eyes a moment longer, and when Rumi leaned in, their lips met again, slower this time, deeper, like they were relearning each other after too many days apart. Every kiss carried the weight of distance, the ache of missed calls, the fear of what could have been lost. Her fingers curled in his shirt, tugging him closer until there was no space left between them. Naruto's hands framed her face, thumbs brushing away the tears neither of them noticed until now. They moved together, almost stumbling, laughing breathlessly against each other's lips as the urgency grew. Kakashi barked once, confused at being left behind, but even he seemed to settle when Naruto lifted Rumi into his arms, carrying her toward the bedroom like it was the most natural thing in the world. The door clicked shut. The shower downstairs let out a slow hiss from a neighbor's unit, steam ghosted under their door like a fog. For the first time since the trials, there were no illusions, no tests, no enemies to fight, just them. Clothes slipped away like barriers they no longer needed. Skin met skin, warmth meeting warmth, each touch reverent and grounding. Naruto kissed the curve of her shoulder, her forehead, the lines of her hands, as though reminding himself she was real. Rumi traced the scars along his ribs and arms with trembling fingers, her breath catching each time she found a new one. Neither spoke, but every touch was a vow, "You're here, you're safe, I love you." They held each other through the night, not in desperation but in a quiet, unshakable certainty. Two lovers who had finally found their way back, stronger than before. Upstairs, Zoey sprawled across the couch, chin propped on her hand, glaring at the ceiling like it had personally betrayed her. "You know they're probably screwing the socks off each other right now," she groaned. Mira sat on the armrest beside her, arms crossed, expression sharp. "Jealous, are we?" Zoey didn't even hide it. "Yes. It's not fair. Rumi's got this guy who'd torched the world if anyone so much as looked at her wrong. He calls her his North Star like it's carved into stone, and he actually means it. Do you realize how rare that is? Every girl alive would kill for that." Myra's face softened a fraction. "That's why she trusts him. Because even with half the country throwing themselves at him, he only sees her." Zoey huffed, burying her face in a pillow. "Ugh. I'm jealous of that kind of trust. Nobody else gets that." But Myra's softness didn't last. Her eyes narrowed, her voice hardening. "And that's why Jinu's dangerous." Zoey frowned. "You're still on about him? He hasn't even done anything. Maybe he actually wants to be free. Maybe he's not like the others." Mira leaned forward, voice sharp enough to cut. "He already gave his soul to jiraiya. That's not something you undo. Whatever he pretends to be, whatever act he puts on it belongs to jiraiya now." Zoey hugged the pillow tighter. "That's not fair. Naruto and Rumi are half demons too. If you condemn him for that, you're condemning them too." Myra's laugh was bitter, almost cruel. "Don't twist it. Rumi and Naruto never chose their BLD. They fight every DMN day to keep it from swallowing them. Jinu chose jiraiya. He signed. That's the difference." Zoey hesitated, mouth opening then closing. She couldn't argue with that. Mira tilted her head toward the floor, toward the muffled laughter that drifted up from Rumi and Naruto's apartment beneath them. Her voice dropped, low and certain. "And when Naruto finds out Jinu's been circling her, that he already belongs to jiraiya, he won't hesitate. He'll tear him apart, and nothing in this city will stop him. If anyone tries," her eyes glinted, "soul will burn with him." The silence that followed was suffocating. Zoey finally whispered, "I just hope Rumi's ready. Because if she's not..." Mira finished flatly, "Then none of us are." Downstairs, the night had stilled into something sacred. The sheets were tangled around them, damp with sweat and heat, their bodies pressed close in a way that felt both grounding and unreal. Rumi's skin was soft against his, warm with the steady rise and fall of her breaths. Her legs curled against his, her arms stretched across his chest like she was claiming him, anchoring him. Naruto's hand moved in slow circles against her back, fingertips gliding over the faint hum of her violet patterns. Every small twitch of his finger made her shift closer, sighing into his chest. The sound tugged something deep inside him, something fragile and tender that no battlefield had ever touched. Skin to skin, he felt everything: the heat of her body, the steady rhythm of her heart, the way her breath ghosted against his collarbone. He kissed the top of her head, lingering there, inhaling the soft scent of her hair as if it alone could keep him alive. Rumi tilted her head just enough to look up at him, her eyes heavy but soft, lips curving in a sleepy smile. "You're really here," she whispered, her voice warm with relief. Not a dream this time. He brushed his thumb across her cheek, grinning faintly. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. Her smile trembled, tears threatening but not falling. She nuzzled into him, pressing her lips against the scar on his chest like it was the most natural thing in the world. Good, she murmured. Because I wouldn't survive losing you again. He promised himself in that moment, I'll kill gods if it means we can stay together. Their souls were bound so tightly now that even death wouldn't be able to separate them. He knew this with the same certainty as he knew the beat of his heart. The demon on the roof, the schemes brewing in shadows, they bothered him, but they couldn't break the one truth that anchored him. He trusted Rumi. And as she stirred just enough to whisper again, half asleep, don't let go, he tightened his arms around her, lips brushing her temple. Never. Her breathing slowed again, drifting into dreams, but he stayed awake, memorizing every detail. Skin to skin, heart to heart, bound by something stronger than fate itself. Who would I have been without her? The picture came too easily. A man behind the counter of a tiny ramen shop, apron stained, smile worn thin but convincing. He'd greet customers with easy charm, crack jokes, pretend everything was fine. But when the lights dimmed and the door shut, the silence would press in. He'd scrub bowls alone, the smell of broth clinging to him like regret, and wonder why the laughter outside never reached him. A half-life. Half a man. Running from the memories that cut too deep, stuffing the pain down behind busy hands and small routines. A soul always searching, never finding. That was who he could have been. That was who he almost was. Then she came. Rumi. His other half. His missing piece. His North Star. She didn't let him stay small. She didn't let him keep running. She pulled him out of the shadows, dragged him into the light, and forced him to face everything he thought would break him. And when he did, when he stood there trembling and cracked open, she stayed. She chose him. Because of her, he wasn't just surviving. He was alive. Every laugh, every kiss, every fight they pushed through together, it gave him weight, gave him purpose. Naruto buried his face into her hair, breathing her in, his arms tightening around her as though to anchor himself. The thought of that empty life, of the man he would have been without her, made his throat tighten. He whispered it into the quiet, a promise sealed against her skin. I'll kill gods if I have to. Nothing's taking you from me. Not even death. Her patterns pulsed faintly against his chest in her sleep, threads of violet answering the vow he'd made. Souls bound tighter than any seal, stronger than any trial. For the first time in a long time, Naruto wasn't searching anymore. He was whole. Naruto's breath warmed the curve of her shoulder as his arms locked tighter, like if he let go for even a second she might slip away. His chest rose and fell with the rhythm of her breathing, but his thoughts burned hotter than any trial, sharper than any blade. He knew the truth now. Without her, he was half a man. A shell. A ghost hiding behind ramen bowls and empty smiles. But with her he was whole. Alive. Worth something. She was everything. And if the world tried to take her away, if gods or demons or fate itself stood in the way, he'd burn it all down. He'd give up his powers, his happiness, even his life, without a second thought. Because without her, he was nothing. Janu slammed the warehouse door so hard the old hinges screamed. The demons scattered inside went silent, watching him like prey reading the mood of a predator. His chest heaved, eyes burning, every step echoing with frustration as he paced the length of the room. She believed him. Rumi actually believed his story, his act about wanting redemption, about craving freedom from the chains of jiraiya. Her eyes had softened. Her guard had lowered. For a moment, just a moment, he had played her guilt perfectly, that gnawing guilt she carried because she and Naruto had escaped, because they were free while the rest of them were not. That was his hook. He could feel it. But then Naruto had appeared. He gritted his teeth until they squeaked. Naruto, with his damn timing, with that look in his eyes, the kind of look that told Jinu he'd burn heaven and hell down for her. He'd ruined everything. And wasn't that a surprise? The hunters knew. They knew about Rumi being a half BLD and they still accepted her. Worse, they accepted him too. Naruto. The golden boy. The devourer. Jinu's nails scraped long gouges into the table as his thoughts twisted darker. He knew Rumi's lineage, her demon BLD ran on her father's side. But Naruto? That was the question that haunted him. The boy spoke perfect Korean, no stumble, no hesitation, no foreigner's tongue. Yet blonde hair, those violet eyes, the energy that burned brighter and stranger than anything he'd seen. That wasn't local BLD. That was Western. A Western demon spawn if he'd ever seen one. It explained the way Naruto fought, the way he shone like something unnatural. It explained why the elders whispered his name like both prophecy and curse. But explanations didn't matter. What mattered was the wreckage Naruto left behind. Jinu's plan shattered, his chance with Rumi snatched out of his hands before it even bloomed. He slammed his fist against the table, splinters snapping. The demons nearby flinched back. Would he abandon it? Walk away from the game he'd been playing, the delicate strings he'd been pulling with her guilt and softness? No. He refused. He'd just have to try again. He'd just have to get her alone, away from Naruto's shadow, away from his suffocating devotion. Yes, Jinu muttered, a sharp smile curling across his lips as he stared at nothing. Alone. That will work. The demons shifted uneasily at the sound of his laughter, brittle, jagged, echoing against the rafters like a warning. Naruto slipped into a deep sleep, the kind that pulled him down fast and hard after days of exhaustion. Darkness folded around him until suddenly it wasn't his own eyes he was looking through. He blinked, and the world shifted. Rumi's world. Her hands moved at her sides, and Bobby's voice carried just ahead, calm and professional as he walked with them down a polished corridor. The rest of Huntrix followed, their footsteps echoing lightly off the floor. He could feel her heartbeat in his chest, fast, steady, too alive to be his own. Through her eyes, he saw the door at the end of the hall. The subtle shift in her breath. The faint glow of her patterns curling. Beneath her sleeve. Naruto's mind reeled. He wasn't in his own body anymore. He was inside hers. Seeing what she saw. One clean flash of understanding, and then he let the vision carry. The corridor stretched forward, quiet but heavy, like something waited just beyond. And even in sleep, he knew this wasn't just a dream. It was a memory. Mira groaned as they walked, arms crossed tight. Why do we have to do this again, Bobby? Bobby's smile didn't waver as he led the way down the hall. Because the fans like both of you. This helps your image, boosts theirs, and everyone profits. Think of it like a team effort. Zoey was barely listening. Her giggles gave her away, cheeks flushed pink. She kept sneaking glances at the door ahead. I just wonder who I'll sit next to, she admitted under her breath, half dreamy. Maybe the gray-haired one. He looks like the type you could fix up, turn him into boyfriend material. Her giggle doubled, bubbly and careless. Mira rolled her eyes so hard it was a miracle she didn't trip. She leaned closer to Rumi, muttering, between you and me, I don't know what's more dangerous, a demon boyband or Zoey simping for one. Rumi snorted despite herself, though her nerves prickled under her skin. She nodded, thankful at least that Zoey never pointed her crushes toward Naruto. That would have been beyond awkward, not even counting the whole half-demon part. No, Zoey and Naruto were like siblings, with Mira as the grouchy older one. That balance worked. Still, her thoughts tugged back to Naruto. He was supposed to be gone a month, and this first week had already tested her in ways she hadn't expected. 3 trials left, maybe 2, if what little she'd heard was true. Was it possible he could finish early? She didn't know. Her mother had been a sealer of the Han Moon. Her duty kept her away from the trials. And because of that, Rumi had never taken them. Neither had Zoey or Mira. None of them had any idea what Naruto was really enduring, what those nights in the forest or under the council's gaze were like. And that unknown gnawed at her, even as Bobby pushed open the door to the signing room. The room buzzed before they even stepped inside. The Saja boys were already seated at the long table, flashing smiles like they'd been born under spotlights. Fans outside the barricade squealed every time one of them shifted, the sound a steady hum even through the thick doors. "Great," Mira muttered under her breath. "We're walking into a circus." Zoey didn't even hear her, she was too busy smoothing her hair, bouncing on her toes like she was about to meet royalty. The moment the Huntrix walked in, 4 sets of eyes landed on them. Closest to the door sat Jinu, leaning back in his chair like the whole thing bored him, but his eyes flicked instantly toward Rumi. The grin he flashed was just sharp enough to feel deliberate. Beside him, Mystery Giant perked up at the sight of Zoey being nudged toward the seat next to him. He ran a hand through his hair, smirk curling like he'd been waiting for this exact pairing. Zoey nearly tripped into the chair, cheeks pink, mumbling a too loud, "Hi." In the center, poor Mira was maneuvered between Abi Ryuk, who immediately leaned too close with a lazy grin, and Romance Inu, who offered her a rose from nowhere like a magician pulling coins from air. Myra's expression screamed "I hate my life" as she sat stiffly, lips pressed thin. On the far end, baby Saja Shu was quiet, scrolling on his phone, in his own little world, polite smile, eyes down, a silent metronome to the room's noise. Bobby clapped his hands, beaming like he'd orchestrated a miracle. "Perfect seating. Now smile, this is good press." Rumi forced a polite nod as she slid into the chair beside Jinu. He leaned in just slightly, his voice low enough only she could hear. "Didn't think we'd meet again so soon," he said, that grin never fading. Rumi's stomach tightened, but her smile for the cameras didn't falter. The flash of cameras and the buzz of fans washed over the room as the Huntrix girls slid into their seats. Zoey barely managed to keep her composure as Mystery Giant leaned forward, chin propped on his hand. "So, are you really this pretty in real life?" he asked smoothly, "or is it just the stage lights?" Zoey's laugh came out too high-pitched. "Why, I mean, thank you." She practically fanned herself with the autograph pen. "I like your, hair." Giant grinned, clearly enjoying every second of her meltdown. His voice stayed soft, almost shy at the edges, like he didn't want the others to hear. Meanwhile, Mira sat between Abby and Romance, her jaw tight. Abby immediately leaned close, his voice a drawl. "You smell good. Like battle and roses." Romance cut in, sliding the rose across the table with a flourish. "Ignore him. This is for you, my tragic beauty. I wrote a song in your honor." Mira pinched the bridge of her nose. "If one of you touches me, I'll break a wrist. Maybe both." Abby laughed like she'd just confessed love, while Romance clutched his chest as if mortally wounded. On the far end, baby Saja kept silent. Polite smiling but still silent. Many fans just assumed he was saving his voice. Rumi kept her composure as best she could beside Jinu. He leaned in slightly, the sharpness of his grin never reaching his eyes. "Funny, isn't it? Fans screaming, lights flashing. All it takes is a smile, and they'll believe anything we want them to." Rumi's hand tightened around the pen. She didn't look at him, but her patterns flickered faint violet under her sleeve. "Some of us don't have to lie to be loved." That wiped the grin off his face for a heartbeat. But then he chuckled low, tilting his head. "You really believe that, don't you? Maybe that's what makes you clueless." She forced herself to smile for the cameras, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her rattled. Still, she couldn't shake the way his words slithered beneath her skin. Across the table, Zoey nearly squealed as Giant brushed her hand accidentally while signing a poster. Mira muttered something under her breath that sounded like, "Kill me now." Rumi exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Because if Jino wanted a game, she wasn't about to lose. The signing blurred on pens scraping, cameras flashing, fans squealing. Rumi smiled, but it was mechanical, her nerves pulled taut by the boys seated beside her. When the crowd thinned and the roar softened, Jino finally spoke. His voice wasn't sharp or cocky, but low, frayed, heavy with weariness. You know, he murmured as his pen glided over another glossy page, I used to dream about this. Music. Crowds. Freedom. But I traded it all away. Sign my soul for Jiraiya's chains. He chuckled softly, hollow. You and Naruto, you're both half-bloods, but you walk in the sun. You're accepted. Protected. Me. I'm just a shadow in his cage. Rumi's chest tightened. She slid another poster back to a fan, her hand trembling slightly. Jinu. He didn't look at her, just kept his pen moving, his smile fixed for the crowd. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad you're free. That you have someone who fights for you. But sometimes I wonder why wasn't I given the same chance? Why was it so easy for you, and impossible for me? His eyes flicked toward her then, glassy, desperate. Maybe if I'd met someone like you earlier, I wouldn't be here at all. Without thinking, Rumi reached across and squeezed his hand. Just for comfort, the same way she would with Zoey or Mira when they were hurting. Her patterns shimmered faintly, a soft violet pulse of empathy. You're not beyond saving, Jinu. You're not. His fingers stilled around hers, his grip tentative, almost disbelieving. To him, the contact lingered like hope. To her, it was nothing but compassion. His jaw tightened. I'm just a monster beyond redemption. A little girl stepped up, sliding a drawing across the table with both hands. For you, Appa. Jinu froze, staring at the crooked sketch of him smiling beneath a bright sun. Rumi leaned closer, her voice soft but firm. See, Jinu. You can be free too. Then she straightened, raising her hand with sudden energy. Everyone give it up for Jinu. Who, Jinu? The crowd roared back, chanting his name. Jinu basked in the noise, but his eyes flicked sidelong to Rumi, unsettled. Further down the table, Myra's pen scratched harder against the photo in front of her. She hadn't missed the hand-holding. Her jaw was tight, her eyes narrowing as she leaned back in her chair, studying him with suspicion sharp enough to cut. Rumi pulled her hand back at last, smiling softly. You don't have to carry this alone forever. Jinu swallowed hard, masking the crack in his composure with a dazzling smile for the crowd. You don't know what that means to me. The fans screamed, oblivious, while Mira leaned back, her gaze fixed on him like a drawn blade. She had seen enough to know, Jinu was playing a game. And Rumi was the piece he wanted most. As the signing drew to a close, the roar of fans ebbed into a softer hum. Posters were tucked away, handlers ushered people out, and the Saja boys began gathering their things. Zoey was mid-stretch, ready to bounce from her chair, when a quiet rustle made her pause. Jian. He moved slowly, almost hesitantly, from his seat. His posture carried that same effortless grace the fans loved, but his hair still veiled his eyes and most of his nose. In his hand was a single red rose, its color startling against the muted light. He stepped closer, careful, and glanced over his shoulder as if making sure the other Saja boys weren't watching. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost fragile under the noise of the room. For your beauty, he murmured, the words nearly lost, as though embarrassed to even let them out. Zoey froze. Her mouth fell open, and the heat climbed fast into her cheeks. Me, she squeaked, clutching the rose like it might disappear if she let go. Jian dipped his head, his hair slipping further to cover his face, as though hiding a blush. He didn't wait for an answer. He turned swiftly, slipping back toward the others with quiet precision, as if he wanted the moment to vanish before it could be noticed. Zoe's heart thundered. To her, It was perfect, a secret meant only for her. Genuine. But Mira saw the whole exchange from across the row. Her eyes narrowed, her pen stilled in her hand. The way Jian had hidden it, the way he made sure no one else saw to her, it wasn't just shyness. It was a game. A dangerous one. And Zoey? Zoey was holding the first piece. After the fans left, Zoey was still a giggling mess, cheeks pink, clutching the rose Jian had slipped her. Rumi sat quiet, lost in thought. Mira, though, was seething. She stalked up to Rumi, voice sharp. Did we forget their enemies, or am I missing something? Rumi, what the hell was that? These are demon servants of Jiraiya and you're holding their hands and cheering them on. Rumi straightened, defensive but calm. They haven't done anything yet. And to be fair, we don't know why they're here. I don't care why, Mira snapped. They follow Jiraiya, they do his bidding. What was resealing the Han Moon for if we're just going to cozy up to demons? They're not all the same, Rumi pushed back. Jinu he seemed like he wanted to be free. From Jiraiya. From all of it. If I'm wrong, I'll tell Naruto myself. But I won't drag him into panic without proof, she added silently, the thought steadying her spine. Myra's jaw tightened. And you believed him? Of course he said that. He's trying to get in your head, Rumi. That's what they do. Zoey winced, hugging her arms around herself. Guys, can we not do this right now? But Rumi pressed on, her voice firm. No, Mira. It's not like that. Naruto would want me to. Don't you dare, Mira cut in, venom in her tone. Don't you dare drag his name into this. Naruto isn't here. And thank God he's not, because if he saw you holding hands with a demon, cheering for one of Jiraiya's slaves, how do you think he'd feel? Rumi flinched but held her ground. Naruto doesn't have to know. It's not a big deal. I'm just trying to help. Zoey groaned, half burying her face in her hands. Please. I hate it when you two fight like this. Myra's eyes widened, disbelief hardening into fury. Not a big deal. You seriously mean to keep this from him? He's a demon who gave his soul to Jiraiya, Rumi. There's no path back from that. He's not like Naruto. He's not like you. He's the enemy. And we're hunters. We slay demons like him. Rumi's voice softened, almost pleading. Maybe he's different. Maybe he can be redeemed. Isn't that what Naruto's existence proves? That not everything is black and white. Wrong, Mira shot back. Naruto isn't like them. He fought every step for his soul. You and he were born half-bloods, but you still had a choice. Jinu gave his soul away. He signed. That's the difference. The words hit hard, echoing in the tense silence. Rumi's fists curled at her sides. I just need time. Let's keep this between us. Please. Zoe's voice cracked the silence, small and uneasy. You guys are scaring me. Can we just drop it for tonight? Myra's glare lingered on Rumi, but she said nothing more. To her, Rumi looked like a girl standing in a minefield, convinced she was saving a wounded dog. And Mira knew, sooner or later, someone was going to get blown apart. Naruto lay there in the dark, Rumi's head resting against his chest, her breathing soft and steady. To anyone else, it would have looked perfect, two lovers tangled together after days of hell apart. Warmth, peace, safety. But Naruto's eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling like it was about to cave in. His heart wasn't calm. It was hammering, erratic, full of noise he couldn't silence. Keep this from him. The words had crawled inside his skull, and now they scratched at every corner, refusing to leave. He replayed Myra's fury, Rumi's deflections, Zoe's silence. Each time he tried to shove it down, it came back sharper. She shifted against him in her sleep, murmuring his name faintly. For a heartbeat, it soothed him. But then his mind betrayed him again. Was she dreaming of me or him? His throat tightened. He looked at her, the same girl who had called him her North Star, who had pulled him through trials where he nearly broke. And yet, she had stood with that demon, defended him, hid it from him. Why? Why couldn't she just tell him? Why couldn't she trust him with this? His patterns flickered faintly in the dark, crimson threaded with violet, betraying the turmoil inside. He pressed a hand over them, trying to will himself calm, but his thoughts spiraled faster. What if she's having second thoughts? What if she's pulling away? What if this Juno means something more than just pity to her? He wanted to shake the thoughts off, but they stuck like thorns under his skin. His chest ached like he was bleeding out from a wound no blade had ever given him. He looked down at her one more time, her face softened in sleep, peaceful and unguarded. Gods, he loved her. He'd kill for her. He'd die for her. He'd already promised himself he'd burn the world if it meant keeping her. But right now, lying there beside her, he couldn't breathe. Quietly, carefully, Naruto slid out from under her, her hand slipping from his chest. She stirred, just slightly, but didn't wake. He stood there in the dark, staring at her sleeping form, torn between shaking her awake and begging for the truth or running from the storm in his own head. He chose the latter. 1 step. 2. Then the air rippled, chakra flaring in a silent pulse. In a blink, the room was empty, the sheet still warm where he had been. Naruto reappeared on the island, the salt air sharp in his lungs. He stared out at the endless ocean, the waves breaking hard against the cliffs, and clenched his fists until his nails dug into his palms. He knew he wouldn't sleep another wink tonight. Not with those words echoing. Not with doubt gnawing at him like this. What are you hiding from me, Rumi? The ocean stretched black and endless under the moonlight. Naruto stood at the cliff's edge, cloak snapping in the salt wind, chest heaving though he hadn't fought a thing yet. He couldn't sit still. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't stop hearing her voice. Naruto doesn't have to know. His jaw clenched. He wanted to laugh, scream, cry, anything but sit here stewing. So he did what he'd always done when the ache threatened to swallow him. He fought. The soul blade snapped into existence, its glow a muted crimson orange against the night. He launched forward, carving through the empty air as if demons swarmed him. Every swing was too sharp, too fast, like his body was trying to split apart the thoughts in his skull. Slash. Step. Twist. Again. Sweat slicked his skin in minutes. His breath grew harsh. The cuts turned sloppier, heavier, his muscles screaming for rest, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. If he slowed down, her voice would creep back in. She held his hand. Crack stone split under his fist. She smiled at him. Slash, a tree trunk fell in two. She chose to hide it. His roar tore into the night as the blade carved a glowing arc through the air, ocean spray exploding like BLD. When his arms gave out, he dropped into push-ups. When those failed, he hurled himself into shadowboxing, strikes snapping, kicks shattering rocks. His lungs burned, his body shook, but still he moved. Finally, his knees buckled. He collapsed to the dirt, blade dissolving to nothing. Shoulders heaving, hands trembling so badly he dug his nails into the earth just to feel something solid. The island was silent but for the waves crashing below. He stared down at his palms, sweat and BLD mixing in the lines of his skin. "Why, Rumi," he whispered, raw. "Why couldn't you just tell me?" No answer came. Only the ocean, endless and indifferent, crashing like it had 1,000 years before him. The waves never stopped. They pounded the cliffs all night long, and Naruto pounded himself to match them strike after strike, until his body screamed, until his vision blurred, until finally he slumped against a jagged rock. At first light, he looked like he'd fought a war. Shirt torn and soaked, patterns faintly glowing from overuse, his body slouched but unbroken. Only this time, the enemy wasn't a demon. It was her voice. Naruto doesn't have to know. The words looped like a curse, sharper than any blade. He dug his hands into his hair, nails scraping scalp, whispering through clenched teeth, "She didn't mean it like that. She couldn't have." He forced himself to think of her laugh, the way she tilted her head when she teased him, the way she called him North Star. That was real. That was them. "Rumi loves me," he said aloud, as if speaking it could make it true. "She'd never, she wouldn't," his voice cracked, thin in the morning air. But then the image slammed back, her hand in Janu's, her smile soft, her touch gentle. It twisted like poison in his chest. Naruto slammed his fist into the dirt, grit grinding into his knuckles. No. No, I'm wrong. I have to be. He swallowed hard, forcing breath even. She'll tell me. If it mattered, she'll tell me herself. She has to. The sun climbed higher, the sea shifting from black to silver blue. Naruto dragged himself upright. Every joint ached, every muscle tight, but he squared his shoulders anyway. He had to wear the mask again, the grin she loved, the boy who never faltered. "Wait and see," he muttered, jaw locked. "If she trusts me, she'll tell me." His reflection glimmered faintly in the blade as it shimmered back into his hand. He held it until the shaking stopped, then let it fade. The cliff was quiet now, save the surf. Naruto turned from it, cloak tugged by the wind, his steps heavy but resolute. He would wait. He would believe. But deep down, the crack was there, the fear that if she didn't tell him, if she kept that piece of herself hidden, it would break more than just his trust. It would break him. Rumi stirred, lips curling into a sly grin as she stretched across the sheets. Her hand reached instinctively for him, for the warmth of Naruto, for the weight of him still lingering from the night before. But the bed was cold. Empty. Her grin turned mischievous, her fingers sliding lower in search of little Naruto. Nothing. Her eyes opened at last, blinking into the soft light of morning, only to find the space beside her completely bare. She sat up slowly, sheets slipping down her chest. "Gone already?" she murmured, half pout, half smirk. "Figures. Sneaks out before round 2. Pushing to her feet, she stretched again, her long hair spilling like a dark waterfall down to her lower back. The strands swayed as she moved, brushing against her skin in a way that almost made her shiver. She gathered it loosely to one side, letting it fall over her shoulder as she padded toward the bathroom. The sleep shirt clung to her curves as she pulled it over her head, tossing it aside without care. Her shorts followed, landing in a heap on the chair. Naked, she caught herself in the mirror. Damp-eyed, faintly flushed, her hair tumbling down her back in dark waves, she almost laughed. "No wonder he couldn't keep his hands off me." She laughed and turned the shower on, stepping in when it was hot enough. The steam wrapped Rumi in warmth as the water slid down her skin, pooling at her feet. She pressed her palms against the cool tile, head bowed under the spray, letting the heat soak through her muscles. "Where did you go, Naruto?" she thought, lips quirking faintly despite herself. Not even a note typical. "Disappear first, explain later." "You're lucky I know you better than that." Her hands moved automatically, lathering soap over her arms, down her sides, tracing familiar lines. When she reached for her hair, her fingers combed through the long strands, dragging the weight of them down until they clung wetly to her back. She laughed softly under the spray. "If you were here, you'd tease me for hogging the hot water. Or worse, you'd climb in uninvited and pretend it was some brilliant idea." The thought painted itself so vividly she almost turned, half expecting him to be leaning against the frame with that boyish grin, arms folded like he'd caught her red-handed. Instead, it was only steam, and the faint echo of his touch from the night before. Her chest warmed, heat rising from beneath her ribs. "Idiot. You fight like the whole world is yours to protect, but you never realize how much lighter I feel when you're just here. She tilted her face back into the spray, water mingling with the smile tugging her lips. Her patterns glowed faintly violet, pulsing in rhythm with her heart, a promise to herself, to him. When she finally shut off the water, the silence settled around her. She stepped out, dragging the towel across her skin, her hair dripping in heavy ropes down her back. Catching her reflection in the fogged mirror, she traced her own face with her fingertip. "I'll tell him when it's more than a feeling," she murmured to the quiet. "Wherever you ran off to, just don't keep me waiting too long." Padding back into the bedroom, towels snug around her, she noticed the sheets still rumpled from the night before. His sword was gone from its usual place against the wall, and the balcony door stood cracked, letting in a curl of morning air. Rumi shook her head, half exasperated, half fond. Already off chasing something. Figures. He'd tell her when he was ready. She stretched, long hair dripping down her back, and let herself flop onto the bed with a sigh. "You better come back hungry, Naruto Uzumaki. I'll make sure breakfast's worth it." The door clicked softly, and Rumi's head lifted from where she lounged on the bed, towel draped loosely around her. Naruto stepped in, sweat strkng his temples, shirt plastered to his chest, cloak slung over one shoulder. His movements were slower than usual, steady, but carrying a weight he didn't speak. Her lips curved as she sat up, eyes flicking over him. "Well, look who decided to come back. You know, if you're gonna sneak off in the middle of the night, the least you could do is bring breakfast." He gave a tired huff of a laugh, running a hand through his damp hair. "Didn't think you'd even wake up." Rumi tilted her head, letting her long hair spill over her shoulder as she patted the space beside her. "After last night? You think I could sleep through you sneaking around? I thought maybe we could," her smile sharpened, teasing, "finish what we started." For a heartbeat, she swore she saw his grin twitch the boyish spark she adored, but it slipped away almost as quickly. "Not today," Naruto muttered, voice quiet but even. He set his cloak aside and unbuckled his sword strap, eyes fixed low. "I need a shower." Her playful edge softened, though she didn't let it show in her voice. "You're not mad at me, are you?" she asked, light as a joke, but her gaze searched him. Naruto paused at the bathroom door, his hand braced against the frame. He didn't turn back, just let out a low breath. "Do I have a reason to be?" The question hit sharper than she expected. Her eyes widened, lips parting, before she caught herself and forced a laugh. "No. Don't be stupid." He nodded once, clipped, and disappeared into the bathroom. A moment later, the shower hissed to life, steam curling out into the room. Rumi sank back into the pillows, her smile returning softer now, less playful. She wasn't worried. Naruto carried weight like other people carried bags of rice, setting it down only when he was ready. If something shadowed him, she trusted he'd tell her when it mattered. Still, she stretched out across the sheets, her violet patterns glowing faintly in the dim light as her fingers traced idle circles on the blanket. "Fine. Play it cool," she murmured with a crooked grin. "But you're not getting out of me that easy, mister." She closed her eyes, listening to the steady rhythm of the shower. Not troubled. Just thoughtful. He'd come around. He always did. The shower hissed off, and a moment later Naruto stepped out, hair damp and clinging to his temples. He knelt to scratch Kakashi behind the ears, the pup bounding excitedly into his lap. Naruto smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes, not like last night. Rumi slipped a fresh shirt over her head, her hair still dripping down her back. She caught his look, the quiet in his face, and forced a smile. "Morning," she said, stepping closer. "Sleep okay?" Naruto hummed. "Guess so." He rubbed Kakashi one last time before standing, grabbing his cloak. His movements were steady, but his energy was different, sealed shut. Rumi frowned. "You're quieter today." He glanced at her, something unreadable flickering across his expression. You said last night you'd tell me about the Saja boys. He paused, his voice carefully even. And Jinu. What were you two doing on the rooftop? Her chest tightened. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. It wasn't anything. We'll talk about it later. Naruto's jaw flexed, but he nodded slowly. Sure. Later. He forced a half-smile that didn't touch his eyes, and turned to the door. Kakashi whimpered as Naruto tugged his boots on with more force than needed. He didn't slam the door, but the click was sharp enough that the silence afterward felt heavier than any shout. Zoey and Mira arrived just in time to hear it. Both froze at the look on Rumi's face. What the hell was that? Zoey whispered, wide-eyed. Mira crossed her arms, sharp gaze landing on Rumi. I told you. You need to tell him. Rumi bristled. I will. Just not now. When? Mira shot back. When it's too late. He already suspects something. You think he won't notice you dodging? Zoey hugged herself, her voice small. You two are perfect. Please don't ruin that. Rumi turned away, biting her lip. I'll explain to him. Later. The silence stretched until Rumi's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, and her stomach knotted. Jinu, meet me at the pier. 9 o'clock, please. Her fingers hovered, then she typed back without thinking. Okay. Myra's eyes narrowed like knives, but she didn't speak. Zoey shifted uncomfortably, hugging her arms tighter. A few more words passed, but eventually the girls left Mira cold, Zoey anxious. The apartment felt too quiet when the door shut behind them. Rumi sighed, running a hand through her damp hair, and padded toward the bathroom to wash her face. The door clicked open again. Naruto stepped back inside, patting at his cloak with a distracted frown. Forgot my wallet. His words cut short. Because there, on the table, her phone lit up again with the glow of the last text. Jinu, 9 o'clock. Don't be late. And beneath it, her reply. Okay. Naruto's heart clenched so hard he thought he might be sick. Naruto stared at the glowing screen, her reply searing itself into his skull. Okay. His breath caught. For a moment, all he could hear was the rush of BLD in his ears, Kakashi's soft whine in the corner, the echo of last night's promises still burned into his chest. She was in the bathroom. He could hear the faint splash of water and part of him wanted to storm in, demand an answer, make her say it to his face. But his legs wouldn't move. His throat locked tight, his heart hammering too fast for words. So he did what he always did when the storm threatened to break him. He ran. Quietly, carefully, he slid the wallet off the counter and tucked it into his cloak. Then he turned for the door. This time, he didn't even bother softening the sound. The click echoed sharp and final through the apartment. Naruto didn't remember the walk. 1 second he was staring at her phone, the next the city was gone, the pier, the crowds, the noise all swallowed by the forest's quiet. The old tree stood before him, massive and scarred, its trunk marked with every vow he'd ever made. His father. His mother. The friends he'd lost. The names of the ones who had carried him when he couldn't carry himself. And at the very center, carved deep, the one he'd added last. Rumi. The bark was rough beneath his hand as he traced the letters, his breath catching in his throat. This was supposed to be sacred. Eternal. Proof that no matter how the world shifted, no matter how much BLD was spilled, some things stayed. Some things were unshakable. But now he couldn't stop seeing her hand in Jinu's. Couldn't stop hearing her say, Naruto doesn't have to know. His grip tightened on the bark until his knuckles split. His patterns flared faint crimson-violet across his skin, pulsing like a wound that wouldn't close. Naruto's hand lingered on the carved letters, the grooves of names that had been his lifeline. His mother. His father. friends long gone. And in the center, carved deepest of all, hers. Rumi. His chest heaved, the silence of the forest crushing in on him. The words clawed out before he could stop them, raw and jagged. I thought after the hell I've been through, after all the BLD, the screams, the battles, his fist trembled against the bark. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could be happy. Just once. Is that too much to ask? He slammed his fist into the trunk, bark cracking under the blow. I've already lost you all, Kakashi, Irika, Jiraiya, everyone who mattered. And now I've got her. His voice broke. So why can't I just be happy? Why does it always feel like it's being ripped away? He struck again, harder. The wood groaned, splintering deep. Why? With a final roar, his fist crashed into the tree. The trunk shuddered, a crack spiderwebbing up its length. The bark split open, and chunks of it tore free, crashing to the ground. No, Naruto dropped to his knees, scrambling desperately as the carved names scattered around him in broken shards. His hands shook as he tried to gather them, clutching at the fragments like they could be pieced back together. Not this, not here. You're supposed to stay. You're supposed to hold. He cradled a piece of bark in his hands, the grooves of a name half sheared through. His throat tightened until he could barely breathe. Around him, the forest was silent. Too silent. The tree that had once been his anchor now lay broken at his feet, names scattered in the dirt, like his own soul torn into pieces. Naruto pressed his forehead to the shards, his voice breaking in a whisper. Why can't I be happy? The only answer was the wind, carrying the pieces of his vow like ashes through the trees. Naruto's hand lingered on the carved letters, the grooves worn smooth by years of touch. His parents. His friends. Every name that had been his anchor when the world tried to break him. And at the center, carved deepest of all, were the ones that mattered most. Hinata. His first love, his anchor before he even understood what love was. Rumi. His North Star, the light that dragged him back every time the darkness tried to claim him. His chest heaved, the silence of the forest pressing in. The words clawed out of his throat, raw and jagged. I thought after everything. After the BLD, the screams, the battles, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could be happy. Just once. Is that too much to ask? His fist trembled against the bark. I already lost you all, Mom, Dad, Jiraiya, Irika, Kakashi, his voice cracked. Hinata. And now I have her. Rumi. But why does it feel like she's slipping too? Why does it always feel like it's being ripped away from me? He slammed his fist into the trunk. The bark cracked, the names shuddering in the wood. Why? He struck again, harder. The wood groaned, splintering deep. Why? With a final roar, his fist crashed into the tree. The trunk split open, bark and carved names tearing free and raining down around him like broken glass. No, Naruto dropped to his knees, scrambling desperately to gather the shards. His hands shook as he tried to clutch them together, as if holding the pieces would make them whole again. Not this. Not here. You're supposed to stay. You're supposed to hold. His fingers closed around the largest fragment, and his breath caught. The name Hinata was jagged and broken down the middle, torn like the wound in his chest. His forehead pressed against the splintered wood, tears spilling freely, hot and unrelenting. You were my first. You were the one who showed me I could be loved at all. And now, his chest convulsed, his voice a hoarse whisper, now I've got Rumi. She's everything. She's all I have left. So why do I keep feeling like I'm going to lose her too? His gaze dropped, blurry with tears, and there, among the scattered fragments, a single piece of bark lay whole. Rumi's name, untouched, unbroken, staring back at him from the dirt. He reached for it with shaking hands, clutching it to his chest like it was the last tether holding him together. The forest gave no answer. Only his ragged cries filled the air, echoing through the broken silence. Naruto cradled both pieces. Hinata's shattered, Rumi's whole, the past and present pressed against his heart. One a scar, the other a vow. Why can't I just be happy? He choked out, his sobs tearing the day apart. The only reply was the wind, carrying his vow, broken, desperate, but still burning through the trees like ashes. Naruto's sobs racked through him, the shards of bark cutting into his palms as if the tree itself wanted him to bleed for what he'd lost. Hinata's name was broken in his grasp, a reminder of the love that had slipped through his fingers. But pressed just as tightly against his chest was Rumi's, whole, unbroken, the last light he couldn't let go of. He dragged his sleeve across his face, smearing tears and blood. His breaths came ragged, chest still shuddering, but the storm inside began to focus into something colder. Sharper. No more running, he whispered to the broken tree. No more doubts. His eyes blazed, violet red cutting through the shadows. If she's slipping away, if there's something she won't tell me, his voice hardened, then I'll get the truth myself. Naruto's jaw clenched. He looked at Hinata's broken name one last time, pressing the shard to his forehead before laying it gently against the roots of the fallen tree. Then he rose, cloak snapping in the night wind, Rumi's unbroken name still clutched against his heart. He turned toward the city lights on the horizon. Toward the pier. I'll get my answers, he muttered, voice raw but steady. At 9. And with a flicker of demon energy, he vanished into the day. Rumi packed her bag carefully, humming under her breath as if the simple rhythm could drown out the unease still clinging to the air. Naruto hadn't come back since storming out. The bed was still cold. The apartment still heavy with silence. She sat at the desk for a moment, pen tapping against paper before she began to write. Be back later tonight. Then we can talk. Her hand lingered on the last word. Talk. That was what he needed to hear, the truth straight from her, without secrets, without fights. She'd explain everything, Juno's plea, the chance at redemption, how they could save him together. Naruto would understand. He always did, even when his temper burned hot. She smiled faintly as she folded the note, setting it where he couldn't miss it. In her heart, she already saw the future unfolding. Whatever shadow hung over Naruto would lift, and they'd start again properly this time. He'd go to concerts with Huntrix, cheering her on from the side of the stage. He'd keep writing his books, his words carrying him even further than the blade ever could. And when the hunters called, he'd answer not as their devourer, but as the man she loved, helping when needed but always returning home. It was perfect. A balance. Their life. Her heart lifted at the thought, the ache of the past weeks softening into excitement. She couldn't wait to see him smile at her again, to see the relief in his eyes when he realized she'd never wavered. Rumi grabbed her bag and slipped out the door, the cool night air brushing against her skin. The city glowed ahead, vibrant and alive, and she walked toward it with light steps, hope carrying her forward. She never noticed the two shadows trailing behind her. The pier creaked under Rumi's steps, the ocean stretching black and endless on either side. She pulled her coat tighter, breath puffing in the cold air as she glanced around. Juno, she called softly. From the shadows, he emerged. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets, his silver hair hiding most of his face, but his eyes tired, hollow caught the lamplight. Thanks for meeting me, he said quietly. Rumi nodded, cautious but curious. You said you wanted to talk. For a long moment, Juno didn't answer. His gaze drifted to the waves slapping the posts, like he needed their rhythm to push him forward. Finally, his voice broke through, low and heavy. I wasn't always like this. 400 years ago, I was just a boy with a voice. I used to sing in the market, hoping someone would toss me a coin. Not for me, for my family. We were starving, but no one cared. Rumi's chest tightened. His words weren't dramatic, they carried the weight of memory. One night, he came. Jiraiya. He offered me a deal serve him, and he'd make me great. He promised my voice would shake kingdoms. Jinoo's lip curled bitterly. And he kept that promise. For a while. I sang for nobles, for kings. They called me brilliant. But they never asked about my family. Never cared about the ones I left behind. Rumi's breath caught. You left them. His eyes flicked to hers, dark and glassy. I thought if I rose high enough, I could drag them up with me. But all I did was abandon them. And when the pattern started to show, he pushed back his sleeve, the faint lines pulsing faintly. I was cast out. Hunted. One night, a hunter cornered me and struck me down. That was when jiraiya claimed me fully. Body, soul, everything. Silence pressed heavy over the pier. Rumi's heart ached. She could almost see it, the hungry boys singing in the square, the young man reaching for something better, the moment of betrayal that sealed his fate. Jinoo, she whispered, stepping closer. It's not too late. You're not beyond saving. Naruto and we can help you. We can find a way. Something flickered in his eyes, hope, fragile and trembling. His hand twitched, then reached for hers. And Rumi didn't pull away. She held his hand, steady and warm, her patterns glowing faint violet against his cold skin. Thank you, he breathed, his head bowing as if her touch alone was salvation. His lips brushed closer to her hand, not quite kissing it, but lingering. Rumi. The voice snapped through the night. Rumi jerked back as Mira and Zoey stormed onto the pier. Myra's glare was sharp enough to cut steel. Zoe's face was pale, uncertain, but her voice trembled with disbelief. What the hell are you doing? Mira demanded. He's a demon, Rumi. Jiraiya's servant. And she gestured at their hands, fury boiling, you're holding him like he's some lost puppy. Rumi's chest heaved. You don't understand. No, you don't, Mira snapped. What about Naruto? Who's going to tell him? The silence was suffocating. Rumi's lips parted, 1,000 excuses clawing at her throat. But another voice cut through, calm and sharp as a blade. I already know. All three girls froze. Slowly, they turned toward the mouth of the pier. Naruto stood there, cloak snapping in the sea wind, his eyes glowing faint crimson. He looked at Jinoo, then at Rumi, and in that moment, the weight of the trials, the BLD, the promises, all burned in his gaze. His voice cracked out, low but sharp, cutting her to the bone. Why keep this a secret from me? Did you not trust me? What did I do to lose your trust? Rumi's lips trembled, her whole body taut with shame. And nothing, she stammered, voice quivering. I didn't want to add more weight on you. Naruto's fists shook at his sides, his eyes burning. We break together. What happened to that? Was that just a lie? No. Rumi's cry ripped from her chest, desperate, raw. Then what is it? He pressed, stepping closer, his voice hollow, heavy as stone. Why do this behind my back? You think I don't deserve to know? The Han moon pulsed weakly between them, its glow faltering like a candle fighting the wind. That was when Jinoo stepped forward, his silver hair catching the lantern light, his voice slipping soft and wounded into the night. Don't blame her too harshly. I asked for her help. That's all. She only wanted to ease a burdened mind. Naruto snapped his head toward him, eyes narrowing. Stay out of this. But Jinoo's tone was calm, almost sad. I'm not your enemy tonight. I told her my story because I thought maybe just maybe someone would hear me. And she did. She showed me kindness when no one else would. He looked at Rumi then, deliberate and steady. She reached out. She touched my hand. For a moment, I wasn't a monster. Naruto's breath hitched, fury and heartbreak colliding in his chest. His voice rose, raw, shaking the boards beneath his feet. You see what you're doing, Rumi? This is what I mean. How am I supposed to trust you when I can't tell your truths from his lies? The Han moon shuddered between them, its light flickering like a dying star. And Junho's faint, hidden smile told the whole story. Every word was a crack, every tear a victory. You think you're clever, don't you? Naruto's voice was low, dangerous. You think you can spin your sob story about family and chains, and she'll fall for it. He took another step, each one heavy enough to shake the boards. You will never be redeemed. You sold your soul to jiraiya. That stain doesn't wash off. Jinho vanished into the dark, shame painting his shoulders, a smile tucked where no one saw. But the pier didn't quiet. It boiled. Rumi turned on Naruto, voice raw. How can you say that? DMN him without even trying. Naruto's chest heaved, his voice tearing out sharp. Because he chose it. He bent the knee to jiraiya, Rumi. That stain doesn't wash away. For his family, she shot back, tears edging her voice. He just wanted to protect them. Naruto's eyes blazed crimson-violet, his patterns trembling like they might split his skin. He abandoned his family. He left them to rot, Rumi. That's not protection, that's selfishness. That's weakness. Her throat tightened, but she didn't back down. Don't talk like you're above him. You abandoned your whole world once. The silence that followed was suffocating. Zoe's hand clamped over her mouth. Mira froze mid-step, her penknife half-drawn, eyes wide. Naruto didn't move. For a heartbeat, he didn't even breathe. Then he smiled. Not the grin Rumi knew, not the boyish, too bright curve of lips that made her laugh even when she didn't want to. No. This was the smile he hadn't worn since he was a child. The smile he used when villagers spat on him, when kids turned their backs, when no one wanted to see him at all. The smile that closed his eyes tight, because if he couldn't see their hatred, maybe it wasn't real. Is that how you see me? His voice was a whisper, but it carved sharper than any blade. Not a man who fought tooth and nail, who stood up when every bone told him to stay down. Not the one who bled, who broke, who clawed his way back to stand by you. His fists shook. Just a coward. A deserter. The pier shuddered as his patterns bled fully crimson, violet shredded away like torn cloth. The vow they'd made, the souls bound tore jagged in the air between them. A fracture. A wound. With a roar, he summoned the soul blade and hurled it into the wood at her feet. The board splintered, the weapon quivering, screaming with his grief. Naruto fell to his knees before her, chest heaving, tears spilling unchecked. He slammed his fist into the pier until it cracked, his voice breaking into a howl. Then cut me down. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 8. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Slygold on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.